is a one-time single investment of $100,000 into the popular higher-yielding covered call style ETF, JEPQ, the JP Morgan Nasdaq Equity Premium Income ETF, enough money to potentially retire completely off the dividends later on. Well, in this video, we're going to go through JEPQ. I'm going to share with you guys exactly what this ETF is, how it works, and why this ETF is so darn popular as of right now. On top of that, I'm going to share with you guys and update you with how many shares of JEPQ I currently have in my portfolio and how much I earn consistently now on a monthly basis. But then later on, towards the end of the video, we're going to go through and I'm going to share with you the exact numbers of what would happen if an investor just invested a single investment of 100K into this very, very powerful ETF. So if this interests you at all, make sure to stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into it. Real quick, for those that haven't already, make sure to go to the first link in my description and grab my new dividend investing ebook, where I share exactly how I went from $0 invested to now earning over $6,000 on a monthly basis and over $1 million invested in the market. Along with the ebook, you're also going to receive my custom dividend tracker, where you can track your dividend progress on an ongoing basis and reach your dividend investing goals. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. Now, for those of you that don't know what this ETF is and maybe why it's so popular, you probably at least have heard of it, if not already own some shares of it in your portfolio as of right now. But the reason this ETF is so popular and why it's so well known is because this ETF offers a ton of income potential as well as upside capital appreciation, or at least has done both historically. Now, the ETF works like this. It says seeking consistent premium income with lower volatility. The JP Morgan Nasdaq Equity Premium Income ETF seeks to deliver monthly distributable income and Nasdaq 100 exposure with less volatility. Now, what's great about ETFs like this that offer this cover call overlay, which we're going to get deeper into here in a second, is it offers you exactly that Nasdaq 100 exposure, which gives you exposure to some of the fastest growing companies across the entire world. But along with it, this ETF consists of a cover call overlay and utilizes a discipline option overlay, such as writing out of the money Nasdaq 100 index call options that seek to generate income but also seek to lower volatility, because let's be real here, the Nasdaq 100 with just bare exposure can be extremely volatile, and some of us investors don't want to stomach that. So what's cool about these covered call style ETFs like this one is that you are getting exposure to the Nasdaq 100, which again are some of the best and fastest growing companies across the entire world. But along with that, because of that option overlay, you're not going to necessarily see as much upside potentially, but you're also not going to see as much downside potentially. And all on the while, you're going to receive a ton of income because of how much volatility is within the Nasdaq 100. Now, with this cover call overlay and of course the exposure to the Nasdaq 100, this ETF, like I said earlier, has grown over time, which is awesome, especially because most investors like myself pretty much bought into this one for the premium income potential. And speaking of premium income potential, looking at the most recent dividend payouts, this ETF does not pay a small amount whatsoever. We're talking about almost 50 cents as of the last payout, 55 cents before then, 55 cents before then. Then before that, anywhere from 42 cents, 44 cents, anywhere from around 38 to 55 cents, or an average probably somewhere around 44 cents is what has been paid to investors like myself over the last year or so. Now, all in all, this gives JEPQ somewhere around a 9 to 10 to 11% trailing 12-month dividend yield, which is a massive yield, especially because if you buy into something like VU or the S&P 500 itself, you're only going to receive 1 to 1.5 to 2% yield starting off. So the reason JEPQ is so popular is because over time, at least historically, so far this ETF has grown. I mean, this ETF is up 17% on the 1 year. Not to mention over this 1 year time frame, this ETF not only is up 17%, but also has paid investors massive dividends every single month along the way. And on the max time frame, JEPQ is up 10.72%, and keep in mind it's only been trading since May of 2022, so it's still relatively early, although we can kind of see where this ETF is heading, at least as long as the market cooperates. And also, before you say, oh, a 10% gain on the max time frame is not really anything to be jumping up and down about, I totally agree with you, but keep in mind with that 10% yield on top of that, investors like myself have seen general market returns over the historical timeline, but on top of that have had exposure to massive amount of income along the way. But the real reason you guys clicked on this video, and for good reason, is because we want to look into what a $100,000 investment initially into JEPQ would turn into later on, and figure out if just $100,000 would be enough for an investor to retire off of. So remember, all these numbers are just theoretical. These are not exacts. This is just based off of some simple math. But as of right now, JEPQ's trailing 12-month dividend yield is around 9.71%. Now, in the future, I don't necessarily see JEPQ paying a much larger yield. I think this ETF is probably going to pay somewhere around an 8 to 12% over time. So just going off of a 9.71% yield should give us a somewhat accurate idea. So a 1% expected dividend amount increase over time, a 1% expected annual share price appreciation. Now JEPQ could grow at 3%, 5%, 8% per year as far as the ETF price goes, but honestly, who really knows? And keep in mind, JEPQ is mostly a premium income ETF, so let's just say the price of the ETF is mostly going to trade sideways. And again, this is just one example. You can of course go into a dividend calculator for free and mess around with this yourself. So a $100,000 initial investment with $1,200 on top of that per month, because I figure an investor would probably still buy $100 on top of that every single month, on top of the 100K invested. A monthly distribution, and here's the important part, we are going to have DRIP turned on, or basically what this means is that investors are going to be reinvesting their dividends that they get paid every single month back into more shares of JEPQ. So although the $100,000 principal seems relatively small in order to completely retire off of, keep in mind if investors do utilize all this capital coming in from dividends and reinvesting them into more shares of JEPQ, you can already somewhat imagine how just 100K could potentially move the needle. Now for the years invested, we're going 30 years because again, most investors start investing maybe in their 20s or their 30s. So let's see what a $100,000 investment into JEPQ turns into later on. So what's kind of crazy is that year number one, if an investor did of course invest $100,000 into JEPQ initially, year number one, this investor would already be receiving $10,154 in dividends. Now this is shocking because again, if you invest into the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ alone, you're not going to see anything near this amount of income probably for several years. Now I get it, those other investments have a lot more growth potential, but still the amount of income potential from something like JEPQ right off the bat is pretty shocking. Now keep in mind that $10,000 is going to be reinvested into more shares of JEPQ, so by year number two, the portfolio is at around $111,000, and by year number two, this portfolio is now paying $11,253 per year in dividends. Now I think it's obvious that it's going to take several years right off the bat to actually retire off the dividend income from JEPQ, so it's not necessarily a get-rich-quick scheme by any means, or it's not necessarily some sort of super risky investment opportunity, but still by year number 8, this portfolio has cracked $200,000 of principal and over $20,000 per year in dividends. Now also, we didn't talk about in this video, everyone's living expenses are going to be different, but let's just say someone's living expenses are somewhere around $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 per year, so that's sort of what we're looking for. So by year number 12, this portfolio, in theory, based off these numbers, would be nearly worth $300,000 and over $30,000 per year in dividends. Now we're definitely getting somewhere. By year number 15, the portfolio is already starting to compound significantly, $400,000 of principal and over $40,000 in dividends per year. So it took 15 years to go from 10,000 to 40,000, which is honestly pretty shocking. Now to be completely honest, it'd probably take around 18, 19, 20, 21 years for an investor to invest $100,000 into JEPQ and then reinvest those dividends along the way till the portfolio can maybe sustain someone's living expenses at $53,000, $58,000, $70,000 per year. But if an investor went all the way to year number 25 and just kept doing this, and if all the numbers went off of the numbers that we used, an investor at this point would have over $1 million into JEPQ and over $102,000 per year in dividends, which to be fair, that's probably enough to live off of for most people. Now all the way at the bottom, the portfolio would be worth around $1.6 million and $163,000 per year in dividends. Now again, these numbers are just estimations. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future. JEPQ could lower their payouts quite a bit. They could also raise them quite a bit. The ETF could change their strategy. Anything could of course happen. Not to mention if you contributed a lot more money per year, I mean obviously the portfolio would only grow substantially faster. But the reality is that just a $100,000 investment into something like JEPQ based off of the historical numbers could potentially offer investors a smooth road to retirement within the next 15 to 20 years, depending on of course their expenses. Now, I also promised I would share with you guys how many shares of JEPQ I currently have as of right now, and across my portfolios, I have somewhere around 525 to 530 shares of JEPQ as of right now, which based off of the most recent payouts, that means that as of right now, I'm getting paid around $200 to $250 per month just from this one single ETF. And even though I've been on the sidelines for a while as far as buying more shares of JEPQ, I decided to start buying a few more shares as of recently during the most recent baby dips because I think this ETF is just too good to pass up. So now that we talked about what a potential $100,000 investment into JEPQ could turn into later on, along with us going over what this ETF is, how it works, etc., and even sharing with you guys how many shares of JEPQ I have as of right now and how much I make. I lastly want to hear from you down below. Is this specific ETF in your portfolio as of right now? Let us know yes or no in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.